We spoke a little bit with Blake Ruffino on our shared charity stripe show that we dropped in the Horns feed. Yes, on Monday. Sorry. Spoke with the combine. Worthy dominated. AD Mitchell dominated. T Sweat looked like a beast. Murphy was fantastic. That was our big four over there. We do PFF mock draft simulator a lot, and so we always look at those rankings. They've moved Murphy into the top 10, which is pretty crazy. Worthy still back in the 60s for their rankings, but I think because of his speed and his return ability, I think he really has a serious shot to go in round one. Cowboys, who were last in the NFL in return yards last year from the punt game. AD Mitchell, Blake agreed, and I'd love to hear your thoughts, Nick, as Toss and I kind of weighed in. Him doing what he did at his size at a 4.34, 6'2", 205 was just simply ridiculous. And then speaking of guys doing what they did at their size, Murphy running a sub 5 was phenomenal and for his stock, and he looked just ripped, honestly. Yeah. And then T Sweat.
Yeah, I mean, our guys crushed it. They put on for the big Longhorn, and really proud of them. I mean, ultimately though, like, it's not, I don't think the combine like makes a huge difference. And I think we've talked about this in the past. It's just a big underwear pageant, you know, according to Quan and a bunch of other former pros, because you ultimately know what you're getting. It is really cool to see Worthy break the record for the 40. I mean, that's like an unheralded thing, you know. Of course, you're always going to see that in the record books. You're never going to see like the pro day 40s. You're always going to see like the combine 40. So really cool for him there. AD Mitchell, though, I think that's the biggest surprise. I think ultimately, like when we were on Chris Lee's show for the Southeastern 14, the YouTube channel, like I talked about how AD Mitchell, you know, had speed, but like we haven't necessarily had speed like Xavier Worthy, you know, opposite side. Now we do with like Niblett and Isaiah Bond and Silas Bolden and Matthew Golden. And I'm like sitting here not knowing that our boy AD can run a 4.35. Now, I mean, I think CJ Vogel even put out his predictions for like what those two receivers were going to run. And I think he put Xavier Worthy at like a 4.35. And I think he put AD Mitchell at a 4.5. So like very off. But the thing is, like, I kind of bought into that as well. I felt, you know, AD Mitchell played with such a big body this year, and he was such a downfield runner and ran nice routes that his speed wasn't really on display this season. That's just not the style of offense that we really ran. But yeah, I mean, it's deceiving because maybe he did beat guys deep, you know, with his speed that we just weren't necessarily picking up on. We know Xavier's speed because we've seen what he's been able to do with the ball in his hands out of the backfield, you know, with his bubble screens, with just regular screens, you know, just creating space for himself. It's more of like the Tyreek Hill, you know, style of wide receiver. But AD's got a little Randy Moss in him. You know, Randy Moss had blazing sub 4.3 speed. And like, it's not something he was known for. He was known for his big playability and his hands and his jump ball and his one-on-one and his routes. And like, that just adds another dimension to AD Mitchell. And I'm not saying both these guys are going to go in the first round, but it would not shock me if like some teams decided, you know what, let's go up and get that, because you can't coach speed. You know, at the end of the day, that's an X factor. And in today's NFL, like, it's such a big thing that, I mean, it's always a big thing, but like, that's why Tyreek Hill is who he is, you know?
I would be at this point, I would be absolutely shocked if AD Mitchell doesn't get picked in the first round. Again, saying I not that I align with where you were saying the PFF ranking of Worthy is with the 50s to 60s, but it wouldn't surprise me if he still ended up in the second round.
You'd be shocked? Mitchell?
I would be shocked if Mitchell wasn't a first round pick. I said this before, I think when we had Quan on the show a while back, like, the only thing that this guy is missing on his college resume is a Biletnikoff season statistically, but everything else on the football field, he does.
Yeah.
And I even thought that Blake kind of besmirched his blocking ability a little bit because he was talking up Brian Thomas's blocking. And I know Blake watches a lot of tape, but he doesn't watch as much of the Longhorns as we do. And AD Mitchell can block on the outside. So he is a weapon in that regard. He's a big possession guy. He's able to find open spots in the zone. He's able to beat guys down the field when he needs to. He obviously he's an excellent contested catch guy, and mentally he's just a beast. And I know he wants to beat everyone when he gets.
He doesn't drop the ball. You know, he doesn't put the ball on the ground. That's the thing. That's a knock on Xavier Worthy. I mean, like, he dropped passes this season and last season. It's always been a thing for him. So that essentially can, knock him out of the first round too. Xavier, I feel like, is a guy who goes in the mid-second, early second round, but AD Mitchell, I think, is going to find his way in the late first.
Well, yeah, I think shocked. I don't know. Disappointed. Yeah, I'd be really disappointed because I think he belongs in that conversation with those tier 2 guys. If you're putting Harrison Jr., Neighbors, Odunze in tier 1, tier 2 has to be Brian Thomas Jr., Keon Coleman, and AD Mitchell. Pick your poison, which is what Blake said with Brian Thomas, and AD Mitchell. We watched so much. We've seen so much of AD Mitchell. We saw what he did to our offense. He just added such a massive positive wrinkle. Like he made us a real threat. I think offensively, game in and game out. So I'm shocked. I don't know. I'm never shocked by the NFL draft at this point. Anything could happen. Like I wouldn't be surprised if he fell out. And would I be grossly disappointed? Yeah. I would be wildly disappointed. I'd be more disappointed if he fell out of the first round than Byron Murphy. I really think he deserves to be a first round pick, like wholeheartedly. And I agree with your resume statement. And I think there's so many teams like
that he just won't fall past those really smart teams between 24 and 32.
Yeah.
That also need wise, like a lot of them actually could use a second wide receiver. And he's just a good fit.
You can't have enough wide receivers in the NFL. And also, when it comes down to today's free agency, like wide receivers are getting paid so much money now. Like, go out and get a cheap option in the draft and pay your other guys. Pay like the big defensive linemen that are up on contracts. Play your quarterback. Like at some point, like the Chiefs are going to have other questions. With the rest of their defense. I mean, they've got Patrick locked up for a while. Kelsey's probably like on his last contract. But wide receiver has always been a question. It's like, go out and get like the cheap option in the draft. Don't go out and try to, get an aging wide receiver in free agency, who's already been at it for a few years. Same thing with any of these teams. I mean, the Bills can go out and do it, right? Like you want a tandem with Diggs, like Gabe Davis was a guy, but like AD Mitchell and Stephon Diggs on the Bills with Josh Allen, like that's insane.
You could trade Diggs too, honestly, and you could let Davis walk, trade Diggs, and just take AD Mitchell. I agree with you. Mike Evans, who's a fantastic receiver, Hall of Fame receiver, beautiful player. 2 years, $52 million.
Yeah, and was he 33 years old, 32 years old?
Doing? Like, what are we doing here? Like, you're go get the younger option. I think one of our guys goes to the Chiefs. I don't think it's Worthy. I don't think it's AD. I bet you the Chiefs trade back and they pick up Jatavian Sanders in the early second rounds or to use him as a replacement for Travis Kelce. He's just like a perfect replacement, a perfect guy to learn under Kelce in my mind. I know they've had other guys who've been really fun and really good, and Mahomes has utilized them pretty well. But Sanders, I just watch his game and I'm like, oh my God, like the way he just drops into that zone and finds open pockets. It's so similar to Travis.